And we will try and make the awkward segue out of that into more sad because it was the season 2 finale of Dark Side of the Ring. The subject matter being the tragic death of Owen Hart. I watched the episode. Huey, you watched the episode. What was your overall thoughts on the Owen Hart episode?
Man, okay. Overall, I enjoyed the episode. As we previewed last week, we anticipated it was going to open up a lot of old feelings and emotions and stuff that you and I, just as fans, haven't thought about maybe really closely for 20 plus years, and it did just that. I mean, just some of the footage that they replayed and the broadcast itself of Owen's death. Wow, I just I think I texted you that night, or yeah, and just my initial reaction was like, I felt like a kid again. Like I felt back to like 1999, and so it just took me back to being 15 years old and just trying to like process what happened. And it was so sad, and there's so much to break down. Quickly, just throw it out there. I mean, just hearing his family speak, because I have not seen of them or heard of them in almost 20 years personally. Just they've obviously no connection with WWE since then, so lost track of who they are and what they've been doing. Just the event itself, if the show should have gone on or not, that's another issue. Just learning about Owen's backstory and his family life, his personal life, that was really interesting to see. And just his legacy to this day now, how he's viewed to him. I mean, so there's a lot to unpackage here. So I mean, for you, did you what was your initial reaction from it all?
I think I've gone on record here a couple times that I have a sort of a
Love hate.
a love hate relationship with Dark Side of the Ring because I think in a vacuum for the diehard fan, it's great to enjoy. They're well produced. They are by and large well researched and well done. I don't know if they're always presented the most equitably to both sides of the equation. So I was a little worried coming into this one again that it was going to, as we talked about last week, there was going to be knives out for Vince McMahon and laying his, Owen Hart's tragic passing at Vince's feet. To be honest, I don't think that they did that as much as I expected.
Okay.
There certainly were moments and
Couple
moments
clips.
that
Yeah.
I disagree with. Um, and look, a widow and the grieving family are entitled. They don't need me to tell them that. They're entitled to feel however they want to feel forever. It is not my position to tell them anything. But as an outsider, looking at the situation,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing what I know of the company and Vince and everything like that, I will not lay the death of Owen Hart at the feet of Vince McMahon or WWF. I would have liked to have seen more of a pursuit of that harness company. And certainly, again, it was the way I come down. It was an awful, awful tragedy, and it reopened those wounds. It is, the one of the worst things to ever happen in wrestling, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And it really it took you back to that place when it happened. I think if things were done if things were to happen today, I don't think there's any way they finish the show.
Yeah.
But it's very easy for us to armchair quarterback that situation because we weren't there, and you got to put yourself back in that time period. We have the benefit of hindsight, the benefit of knowing that WWF won the Monday Night War and put WCW out of business. We don't know what the mindset was there. Look, if we canceled the show, what ramifications that would have for the overall health of the company and so many people within the company that Vince is responsible for and what have you. So, look, I totally get the argument about canceling the show and I see both sides of the show must go on stuff. In my estimation, look, somebody died, you should stop the show. If anything, to just preserve, as Martha alluded to, the fidelity of, the fact that there was his blood in the ring.
Yeah.
There's just certain things that you just want to, let a due process, run its course so they could figure out what happened. But,
Well,
I'm not so interested in because they didn't just throwing the blame around, I guess.
well, the thing keep in mind also, I think now looking back on it, as you said, hindsight is it was a crime scene, and you would think the police would have came in and like, hey. So even if Vince and them did not stop the show must go on. Their mentality in that moment, take it out of their hands, make it easier for
Well,
them as far as maybe the police coming in and say, hey, listen, there's a death here. We need to investigate, stop the show. So the other thing too is it's unfortunate now with the harness. Like he had a different harness, all the other stuff we saw on live TV leading up to that pay-per-view. And then they decided to change it up just to save an extra couple seconds of him, jumping out of the harness onto the ground. And it was just like, oh my God. And I think John Pollock, I think a journalist or writer, I think last year did a really in-depth podcast explaining the whole situation. So if you want more insight about the day itself and what happened, definitely seek that out. But for that day itself, I mean, there's a lot to break down. I enjoy obviously seeing like just some of his early work in the episode of him wrestling in Canada and just transitioning to WWF. And just, you and I, growing up in the 90s, we saw Owen make his transition here in America on the WWF platform. So that was just really cool seeing that. I kind of wish they showed a little bit more of that, but I get it. You only have an hour episode to work with. You could easily done like a 2-hour thing on him, similar to Chris Benoit's episode. But so they kind of just, quickly went over his early years in wrestling. I would love to hear more about the Hart family and just growing up in that family, wrestling with them, training with them.
To me, the most glaring thing about this episode is that Brett wasn't on it.
Exactly, dude. That's what I was getting to. It's like, where was Brett? Brett was in season 1, and where was the other members that are alive or other members of the family that could have spoke on the other side of the story? Because that was a big issue.
I don't know. I don't know what channels were taken to try and get them on. They might just not be interested in speaking about it. They might not be interested in speaking about it in one that they were worried. I could see them not wanting to be on it because, listen, any documentarian has an agenda. They are sort of scientists that sort of manipulate the hypothesis and they show the evidence that supports their hypothesis. And that's not to say that it's with an ill intent or anything like that, but documentarians are storytellers, so they have a beginning and middle and end story that they're hoping to tell by and large. Mm-hmm. And I would not be surprised if the Hart family did not want to offer their words and have anything taken out of context and tell a story that is less than 100% what they believe in their hearts. But I did think, Brett being on it would have gone a long way with me to make this feel more legitimate. The fact that he wasn't on it, I think, takes away a lot from the episode because, listen, Brett obviously loved Owen, and Brett is the Titanic figure that we still have, from the Hart family that's in wrestling, and he has mended fences with WWE, and I would be interested I would have been very interested to hear how that happened, and what this documentary doesn't go into is that after Owen's death, Stu Hart maintained very close relationship with Vince McMahon. That after the screw job, which obviously preceded Owen's death, the relationship between Vince McMahon and Stu Hart is sort of an unexplored avenue of that story, and the one that they didn't go into there. So not having Brett, I think, really hurt this piece. I, like you, I enjoyed seeing the early stuff. And one thing while I'm thinking about it, one of the things in this documentary they were sort of, and JR too, was deriding the fact that they were putting him back in the blue blazer getup and what a waste of Owen's talent that was. And I can tell you, as a viewer and as a fan of wrestling in my teenage years, we all knew it was Owen Hart. They did all that whole deal. It was getting over, in my opinion. It was working. And it was, in my opinion, as I was watching, I was like, I firmly, look, he was supposed to beat Godfather that night to win the Intercontinental Championship. It was, in my opinion, going to be a cool springboard for Owen into what he was going to be doing. And it made sense to have this character as sort of a rebuke for the Attitude Era, for all the, sort of a, not RTC level, but a different, like this Hulk Hogan type hero that sees all this sex, drugs, and rock and roll going on in wrestling and wanting to put a stop to that. I thought it was working. As a young wrestling fan, I
Yeah.
remember being into the Return of the Blue Blazer and all the tongue-in-cheek stuff they were doing with, Owen denying that it was him even though he was unmasked and claiming the footage was doctored. So I know they were ripping on it a lot. I liked it.
Well, okay, so if you want to talk on just about Owen's career during that point, yeah, I'm with you. I enjoyed Owen Hart a lot. I mean, obviously Brett #1, but Owen was #2, and but as far as his personality, I really enjoyed it. I mean, what he did, the second incarnation, the Heart Foundation, to the Heart Foundation, the whole stable itself, and then on his own, joining the Nation of Domination, and with the Slammy Awards, all that stuff, and his personality, though, woo, like he kept going, woo,
Yeah,
all the time.
Owen had personality for days,
Yeah,
which was
well,
an interesting thing that in some of his previous gimmicks, it was hard to get that out of him in those gimmicks necessarily. But yeah, like you said, with the Slammy Award thing, and I thought the Blue Blazer reincarnation was getting that personality out of him. I still remember vividly, him cutting those just the cheesy over the top, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and drink your milk. It was fun stuff, and it was appropriate for the era, and I thought it was really going to work, until obviously the tragedy that took him away from us. And the thing that I kept thinking about
yeah,
during Dark Side of the Ring when he passed, just if he had stayed alive, the matches he could have had with Chris Jericho, with Kurt
yes.
Angle, Eddie Guerrero, all these guys, I have no doubt that he would have been a world champion. And I think, one of the missed opportunities that they had when he was alive is not being in a major title feud with Shawn Michaels post Screwjob. Now, maybe those wires were too tense at the time, but that would have worked. It would absolutely would have worked.
Yeah, and I was just gonna bring that up too. It's just when Chris Jericho said that, it was like he was so bummed because he joined the company August '99, so just a few months of potentially maybe having a program with Owen Hart. And as he said, yeah, Kurt Angle, all the guys that came over from WCW, and within a few years, the quote ruthless aggression era started. And so, sure, by that point, Owen might have been a little bit older compared to his peers at that time, but nonetheless, could have been putting on some banger matches with all those guys. So it's that big what if question now, from a fantasy booking standpoint. It would have just been some amazing stuff. And the other thing too was, it was interesting though, for someone as talented as he was, you would have thought he would have eat, sleep, breathe wrestling. But they said, his family said early on, he was trying to save up and retire, at a fairly decent young age.
That is one thing that I've heard a lot of conflicting reports about.
Okay.
Is that what I have heard from people like Bruce Pritchard and Bret Hart has spoken about Owen's love of wrestling, but what I've heard from like Bruce Pritchard's podcasts and stuff like that is that Owen loved wrestling. He did eat, drink, sleep, and breathe wrestling, but he knew Martha didn't like wrestling because obviously it was this tough life that was, taking him away from his family, so many days of the year. So to her and to his family, it was sort of, he would downplay his love of it to make her feel better and stuff like that. Again, those are not my words. That is just what has been reported by one of the major figures that was there at the time.
Yeah.
And so I was interested because that is one of the things in the last episode when I was talking, is like he was somebody who loved wrestling. And that is something that I've always been told, and that's something that I believe. I don't think you could do it and do it at the level that he did it and not have that same passion that all the other greats had.
Absolutely. I mean, you look back at him and Brett, that probably arguably the best opening match ever for a WrestleMania was him and Brett. It was just amazing stuff, his work in the ring. But by the way, just before I forget, I mean, his son, by God, just looks just like him.
Yeah,
I was watching, I was like, oh my God, he looks just like his dad. And it's really interesting, just they are so, I could just tell by their mood and their dialogue, they're just so anti-wrestling now, for obvious reasons. But it's just,
of course,
she's a doctor, he's a lawyer, the daughter is a journalist grad, and they want nothing to do with wrestling. They feel wrestling is what ultimately, I mean, they don't want nothing to do with it because wrestling, was the reason his dad is no longer with us. And they say if he wasn't a wrestler, he could still be alive today, which, yeah, I totally understand that. I just, it popped in my mind during the episode. Like, if Owen was still alive, I wonder if his son would have been a wrestler, and just curious what if he would have been just like his dad. I mean, that's just another what if question. Obviously,
Like I said at the start of this, I will not tell any family in that kind of pain that I cannot even fathom what to
yeah.
think about pro wrestling
Hmm.
or anyone. It's not my place to do that. I do think that given I'm one super proud of all of them and the good philanthropy work that they're doing. I think the Owen Hart Foundation is a terrific way to honor Owen,
Hmm.
and I think as impassioned as Mark Henry's speech was at the WWE Hall of Fame, and it was
Yeah.
certainly a highlight for me.
Yeah.
They don't want Owen Hart going into the WWE Hall of Fame, and I think we all just have to come to terms with that and respect their opinion on the matter, and move on from that topic because it's a yearly sort of thing. Is this going to be the year where we can finally get Owen to the Hall of Fame? I don't, after watching that, I don't see it happening, and we just have to sort of make our peace with that's their decision.
And you could tell it's not only her, it's the son. So I mean, this is something for as long as Martha's alive and as long as the son's alive, it's not going to happen. And so, like, the son is definitely just preaching what his mom believes, and this is something that there's no point asking them. The
Yeah,
answer is simple, no. So it's definitely. I mean, after this episode, I definitely side with them more and understand their viewpoint and agree with it. It's and Martha in other interviews has been kind of critical just about the Hall of Fame in general, the WWE Hall of Fame, like what it really is, what it represents. I think I saw it was a Dave Meltzer or something posted like Owens in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, I think Canada. So like he's in a Hall of Fame if you want to give that title to him, and as accomplishment. But as far as the WWE Hall of Fame, and this is something we've talked about many times before in the past. Just what is the actual Hall of Fame? There is no actual like location, place to go. It's just whoever's in the good graces of the company at the time who gets in, who can maybe sell tickets for the arena show of it. And I mean, we can go on and just be critical of the actual Hall of Fame ceremony and what it really represents, and if it does really represent anything outside of what happens that respected year. But so I understand for them, it's like there's no point of even bring up the question anymore.
yeah. I
They
think
don't want him in. There's nothing for him to actually go into per se, and all that stuff about.
I just think that we have to just step away from that constant sort of hammering every year of it. And I still will pray that there will be a mending of fences there because I believe that there's nothing that can't be really reconciled if two people can sort of open their hearts to something. So I will still hope for some type of reconciliation just because I think that will help everyone involved to lay down whatever bags of bricks and grief that they have